Okay. Yeah, I've been running all over the place today. Started at 7 a.m. and had a doctor's appointment, and thought it would take an hour. Took 2 hours. And I had a web chat I had planned, so I started doing that in the car. I got back to my computer, and I just finished that like 4 minutes ago. So now let's make some video games. All right, where did we leave off here? Okay, so we have our little platformer guy, and he rolls back and forth. We have a, oh, there's our bowling pin. Okay, so right now we were messing around with some of the drag, and we saw that he gets, I think we almost made him stop or something like that. So that's kind of where things sit right now. But we're messing around with this idea of a platformer, and let's look at our bowling pin. And let's actually, I think right now we have this guy's density set to a 1, this friction set to a 3. So did we make the friction go up more than that? Oh, with the rule. With the rule. That's right. And that was in our bowling pin's rule. That's it. We set the friction to some huge number. So we can make that higher, and then hopefully it drags. Whoa. But doesn't really matter. So we're not going to leave this guy on the scene for very long. Okay. So at this point, we have a single ground unit that we are rolling on. But typically in our Mario games, we have things we have to jump on and stuff like that, right? Okay, so we want to think about how does jumping work. So for right now, I'm going to give ourselves another platform out here. I'll make it wide to compensate for my bad gameplay. Okay, so we have another thing that we now know how to collide with, and now we can no longer get to that other side of the game, and our bowling pin will never get to us because he's stuck on the other side of that. So we'd like to have some way of getting up there. So right now we're going to go ahead and do our traditional jump thing with the space bar and see how that might work. So we'll go into our player, and we have the move right, we have the move left. So now we need to give ourselves kind of a move, or we need to give ourselves a jump rule, right? Where did that go? Oh, it just wrapped it. We don't want that. All right. So here, I don't like using the create rule thing up there. I like to drag it in from over here. So we'll go to our rule behavior. And that way we could place it exactly where we want it. All right, we're going to call this guy jump. So actor receives the event, keyboard, space. When it's down, we want him to go up into the air, right? How would we make our guy go up into the air? Right now we have a force constantly pushing down on us. That's gravity, right? And remember when we set up gravity, gravity is a fictitious force in our game, and all it is a constant force that's pushing us downwards and accelerating us. We've put ground underneath us that we're constantly colliding with, so the gravity is forcing us down and the ground is holding us up. And we've changed our bounciness to not hop around on it, so now that's how we're standing there. When I want to jump up, I need to fight against gravity. So how might we jump? Okay, well I have the rule for jump. I'm going to hit the space bar. So when I hit the space bar, what does it mean to jump?
Set the Y to go up.
Set the Y to go up. Okay, what does that mean?
For like when you press the button, you use that.
You want me to change an attribute?
There you go.
Which attribute?
I'll find it for you in
Linear velocity on y. And what are we going to set this to? Like 200? All right. And we'll steal this real quick. Well, we could, but won't his linear velocity already be 0? Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. If his... Well, actually, both of them are going to have interesting things. So if we add it to ourselves, even this one, actually adding it to yourself might be more dangerous. Will allow you to jump and then keep jumping, almost build a stair step type thing, which is great because that allows you to get through the level real easy. Right? But let's see the difference, because I think that could be an interesting thing. We're going to have to limit how many times we can press the space bar. But we'll assume it's 0 to begin with. And when we let go of it, we'll switch it to 0. So that's me holding it down. But then when I let go, gravity just takes over. But at least I can totally Mario-esque, right? All right, so we're able to jump now, but we are giving ourselves almost like a floating type of effect. We want to be able to just jump once, and we have to time it. So I want to do it when I hit jump. I don't have this opportunity to keep maneuvering and stuff like that. Similarly, when Mario is in the air, can Mario zip over right and left? Or when he's in the air, since his feet aren't on the ground, can he not really do things like that? We think about how when Mario jumps, I mean, I have full control going back and forth here. Is that how Mario works? So if I jump straight up and then I hit over, I can do that in Mario. Do we have a Mario Brothers emulator here? Oh, here, play Mario and Flash. Mega Man. So we got Mario, we got Zelda, we got the guy from Contra. Simon, is that from Castlevania? That's Mega Man. That's from Metroid, right? Man, way better than normal Mario. Perhaps I should have looked at others. Okay, so when Mario jumps, I'm just going to jump and push over. It looks like I was able to move a little bit. Uh-oh. Too many monsters. All right. All right, so we need to give ourselves... Now, if we looked at Mario there, it seemed like gravity had a lot harder pull on him, right? So we can go and do that. We can give ourselves a harder pull on gravity, because he dropped down very quickly. So it was like he had control over himself in the air, but he fell so quickly that that control didn't really allow him to do tons. So we'll go to our scene. We'll go to gravity, and let's change our gravity to 500. 5 times what it was before. All right, so now our jumping doesn't let us go as high, so we need to increase our linear velocity to fight against it, but hopefully gravity takes us farther down, or down quicker. So let's update our linear velocity. Let's change it to 500. All right, so he's definitely falling faster now. All right. Let's up the gravity even more. Let's do 1,000. Okay, drops pretty quick now. Okay, so we can keep playing with that if we want. To make him jump a little bit more, just so he gets a little bit higher jump. Let's change it to 600.
When you let go of the space bar, you don't really need the change attribute.
Right. We don't need that to go to 0, right? So when we let go, right now, we see him pausing. You're only barely seeing it there, but we're literally, yeah. Right, so we're stopping whatever gravity is doing to us naturally. So if I just get rid of that, we'll leave our linear velocity at 600. So we go up, we start off at 600, but we have gravity pushing against us. So 600 becomes 500, becomes 400, we hit our peak, and then all of a sudden we're dropping down to the ground until we collide again. That makes sense? So that should give us a view . All right, so seems to be reasonable on the droppiness. I still think we can move too much in the air, and we can still jump twice. Probably don't want to do that. Okay, but let's just solve one problem at a time. Forget how much we can move in the air. We can always adjust that later. How do we prevent ourselves from being able to jump multiple times like this? I could just spend the whole game above the scene if I want. I lost. I think I'm off the scene somewhere. Oh, whatever. Okay. Put a timer on which part of it. How would this timer work?
So that your velocity only changes for 5 seconds. Oh, not 5 seconds.
Well, isn't that already happening to our velocity? When I first press this button, my velocity goes to 600, but it's immediately being pressed back down. It's like on a constant drop because gravity's pushing down on me. I want it to be that when I am in the air, I can't jump again. I can only jump when my feet are on the ground. Go ahead.
Put a counter on it.
Okay, how would the counter work?
After one, if like number of jumps goes over 1, then you just change the jump velocity to 0.
Okay. When do I change it back to 0? So you're saying, okay, so right now it's at 0, so I'm allowed to jump.
Yeah.
So now I'm up in the air, it's at 1, so I can't jump again if it's at 1?
Over 1. So it goes to like 2, then it won't work.
How would it get to 2?
If you press the space bar.
Okay, so every time I press the space bar, it goes up. But I'm only allowed to jump if it's at 0?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's at 0 right now, I hit the space bar, I'm allowed to jump. So now I hit the space bar again, nothing should happen? Okay, should it go up again? Or is it just 0 or 1? I'm allowed to jump or I'm not allowed to jump. Okay, so it's a toggle, not really a counter, right? Okay, so when it's a 0, I'm allowed to jump. When it's a 1, I'm not. All right? So we can make this associated with our dude here. So I'll just create a Boolean. Instead of a number, we'll create a Boolean. We'll call this guy can jump. Okay, when he first comes into existence, it'll be actually, let's start it off as false. Okay, start off as false. Now, when he is touching the ground, So we need to create a rule. This guy knows how to collide with the ground already, but this doesn't. A collide behavior does not allow us to respond. Okay, it just says that this guy knows how to collide with the ground on a constant basis. I want to be able to detect when he's hit the ground so I can update the can jump function. Okay, their can jump attribute. So I'm going to create a rule here. We'll just call this guy can jump. So when the actor receives an overlap or collides with the actor of type ground, when that happens, when I do collide with the ground, I'm going to change my attribute, can jump, to true. As long as I've hit the ground, I am allowed to jump now. Okay? Now in our jump rule, this guy here, before I just change the attribute to 600, I want to say if the spacebar was pressed, and, so all of these conditions need to be true. So if the space key was pressed, and the attribute, which attribute? This player's can jump attribute is true. So if it's currently true, go ahead and change his attribute to 600 and set it to false. So we'll change another attribute. So we're changing two attributes in here. Make him go up in the air, but also make it so that he cannot jump right now. That way we cannot jump a second time. That makes sense? Then when he falls back down to earth and he actually hits the ground, we'll change it back to true. Seem to make sense? Okay, so understand the difference between the collide behavior, which allows us to have constant collision with the ground in a high performance way, and responding to the event that occurs when we hit the ground. Okay, and this only occurs once when we first hit the ground. So we're not changing this attribute over and over and over again. Okay? Okay, so now let's look back at our bowling pin. I'm going to give myself some more ground down here. All right, and we'll go ahead and run this real quick. And we'll watch our bowling pin. Didn't we have the guy moving? Apparently not. Knows how to collide with the ground, knows how to collide with the player. That was bouncing this stuff. Okay, so we just need to set his linear velocity on X to, let's say, negative 200. All right, so he bumped up against the deal here. Now what we wanted to do is we want him to bump up against this and then backtrack. We'd like him to go back and forth between these two. Make sense? All right, so if you're the bowling pin Here, I'll just pretend like I'm the bowling pin here for a second. If I'm the bowling pin and I'm rolling towards here and all of a sudden I hit this, my linear velocity was 200. We can make that up or down, whatever. But it was 200, then I bumped into this. What do I want to happen? Actually, it was negative 200 in that case. I want it to become 200, so I go this way. Then I want it to become negative 200. Then I want it to become 100, or 200 again. So I can keep multiplying it by negative 1. Every single time there's a collision, I can multiply his linear velocity by negative 1 to make him bounce back and forth between those two things. Make sense? So again, that's not the collide rule of knowing how to collide with the ground or the player. That is now or the collide behavior rather. Now this is a rule that allows us to respond to asking a question. Just like our first day of class. How many of you got down the halls without bumping into any walls? Well, this guy's going to ask the question, did I bump into the ground?
Would you have to distinguish between ground and walls because it's colliding with the ground?
Yep. Okay. Did I bump into the ground? So actor receives overlaps or collides with the ground. So what's going to happen here? Well, we're going to change an attribute. Bowling pins, linear velocity on x equal to whatever it currently is times negative 1. So bowling pins, linear velocity on x times negative 1. Oh, not plus negative 1. All right. So the concept here is now it should bounce back and forth. Well, we have an issue. Well, when this guy first, we didn't get over here quick enough, but when he first hit the ground, he then went this way. We had a rule set up for him to go this way, but as soon as he collided with the ground, we multiplied by negative 1. So he went here. And he was constantly colliding with the ground, colliding with the ground, colliding with the ground. And here, I'll just shove him under there. There we go. All right. So this rule doesn't take into account the collisions that we want. It takes into account all these collisions that are happening as he's moving along the ground. How can we fix this? If you were writing this game, I mean, we don't want to have all, this is not a wall, correct? That's ground. That's why we put it there. All right, so this is ground. But we want him to turn around. I mean, really, we don't want him to turn around when he gets stuck here. We want him to turn around kind of like right here. So it's almost like he's on patrol, right, between these two things. So how might you write this? It's kind of an interesting thing that Game Salad doesn't come pre-built with, but a lot of game engines have this built in. So let's create another actor. Anybody have an idea? Good.
Invisible wall?
Okay. Could create an invisible wall. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name this actor a bumper. Bumper. All right. So it's going to be a bumper. And for right now, let's just change his color to pink. And we'll change size to 30 for right now. That way we can at least see these guys. Because probably from a design perspective, we don't want to have all these invisible walls all over the place. Right? That might be, you have this game that just has a zillion invisible walls and you don't know where anything is anymore. So we'll put a couple of bumpers out here. Now we're going to set up that this guy knows how to collide with bumpers, and bumpers change his linear velocity. Okay, so we'll go back into our bowling pin, and instead of this guy, this is going to be, did I bump into a bumper? So he now knows if he collided with a bumper. If he collides with a bumper, multiply his linear velocity in x by -1. All right, so we'll go here. You gotta go back. Oh, the bumper fell right through the ground. No bumper. We should have seen that since we made it pink. Okay, so gotta go back into our bumper. See, I was testing you. Go to his motion. Say that this guy is, maybe he's under physics. Not movable. Okay, he's not movable. That guy's fixed. So now our bumper should not fall through the ground. What's interesting? Why did he stop? Too much forgive his friction set up to something ridiculous. So he slid to a stop, right? All right, so let's put his.
It'll stop anyways because it's not changing the value of the velocity, just the direction. So it'll slowly slow down, bumping between the two.
Okay.
So he has to get a refresh of speed
Each time he hits.
Yeah, or just no friction at all.
I was going to switch his friction to 0. But then we also need to set the ground's friction. Actually, I don't think we need to set the ground's friction. If this guy has no friction, then he won't slow down. And this is kind of a, oh. I almost knocked over the bowling pin. That was awesome. Oh. All right. So now we got this guy bouncing back and forth. How should we destroy our enemies in this game? I mean, the idea is this guy's a bowling ball, right? Okay. Now, bowling balls, they could just run into their enemies. Now, when they run into their enemies, the guy goes bouncing off. And right now we have this problem. I knocked herself out. All right, so right now we have this problem where the bowling pin still lives there. So how do we get rid of our bowling pins? Let's say we want to run into him and have him literally go away when we run into him. But we want it to look right. So we don't want him to just get destroyed the second we touch him. So we're going to bump into him, and then we want something to happen. Maybe a quarter of a second later, he dies. Okay, explode would be cool. And then we're going to have to work with animations. So let's look at some of our options here. We're going to say if the bowling pin, we're going to add another rule. If he overlaps or collides with an actor of type player, let's just immediately make him get destroyed. And we'll see how dumb that looks. All right, so that's stupid, right? Okay, so we want there to be some sort of delay. All right, so how can we delay stuff? I already have a rule here. This rule says, did I hit a player? Right now, he just gets destroyed. If you remember about timers, and eventually we're going to come back and look at loops here. We can make a timer do something after 0.25 seconds, for example. So after 0.25 seconds, then he'll get destroyed. See what that looks like. Ruh-roh. Oh, I got to say run to completion. Okay, the reason that wasn't happening before, I would have had to jump out of the way, is he came back and hit me again. So I started the timer again. So I kept refreshing the timer because I didn't get out of the way. Where now I can bump into him, and since I hit run to completion, it's guaranteed to finish that timer. Okay? Now, we probably don't want this guy to get destroyed when our angry bowling ball hits him. That isn't to say this guy shouldn't get knocked over or something like that. He already knows how to collide with a player. So from this dude's perspective, from a bowling pin's perspective, we don't want him to get destroyed just because he bumped into a player. In fact, if anything, we want the player to get hurt when he bumps into an enemy, right? That's what happens in Mario. All right, so we saw how that timer worked, though, for delaying something, and then by saying run to completion, it'll make sure whatever we wanted to happen. But we really want Mario to get hurt, or our bowling ball. We should give this guy a name. Somebody come up with a good name for him. Didn't we call him Smiley before? It's kind of a bad name, though. Well, we'll leave it for now until we come up with a better name. All right, so we need to add a rule to Smiley that says did I hit an enemy? Right now we only have one kind of enemy. So we overlap or collide with an actor of type bowling pin. What should happen? For right now, let's just make ourselves shrink. Okay, that'll kind of show us that these collisions are happening. So we're going to change an attribute. Actually, I think we can... Oh, I don't want to do that. That'll happen over time. Change size. Well, that's also a growth rate. Yeah. Go by. We'll have in size. I think that'll work. Or is this a percentage? Yeah, it was a percentage. So we'll say 50. That's going to make them bigger, though. We do negative 50. We're going to have to do the math. Well, let's see what happens. Yeah. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right? Still fine. Oh no. He's still there. He's totally still there. even a pixel anymore? All right, so we probably want to give him so many lives, right? So at this point, when he hits something, he gets hurt, correct? And that makes him less capable of doing things. But usually you only have like, 3 lives or so much damage you could take. And Mario, when he's big, he just goes down to one size smaller, right? And then when he's already at the smallest, he dies. So you might say, what's his current size in here for whether or not Mario dies, something like that. So we could add a integer. And for this guy, let's just say he has hit points. And let's say Mario starts off with 3 hit points. So did I hit an enemy? If yes, I don't just automatically change my size. I'm going to say, we're going to add a rule. We're going to say if a certain attribute, Smiley's hit points attribute, if it's greater than 1, we'll change our size in half. And then do what? We want to change the attribute associated with our hit points to be 1 less than it was. So hit points is equal to hit points minus 1. All right. It says, should I live? That's what that rule's for. The otherwise for that is I should die. So for right now, we'll just do the stupid destroy where I just disappear. All right, so if I bump into an enemy, that's what this rule is. I ask myself, should I live? If I should live, what does that mean? That means that my hit points is greater than 1, because if it's not, 1 will go down to 0. Then I will halve my size and subtract 1 from my hit points. Otherwise, I'll destroy myself. Whoa, barely survived that. Oh man, look. Oh, because I can go through the good news is I do fit underneath the, I do fit underneath here now. He's so cute. But we'll go ahead and make him die. See, he barely even has an impact at that size to the bowling pin. All right, well, he died, and now we want, when you die, there should be like a game over screen, right? So we need to have different screens in our game. So we're going to have another scene. So we'll go back out to our scenes. We'll add another scene. We're going to call this guy Game Over. All right, so notice our Game Over scene is currently blank. We'll go ahead and I guess we can kind of do whatever we want. Just for right now, I'll just throw some ground out here. But I'm going to change this guy to just display some text. It says Game Over. And we'll do that in black. Should be fairly obvious. We switch scenes anyways, but this will make it abundantly clear. All right, so this will say Game Over, and I'll just preview this real quick. So that's what our Game Over scene will look like for right now. So we'll go back to our initial scene. Go back to our smiley. And by the way, these rules associated with actors go across all of our scenes. All right, so we could have adjusted smiley in the scene we were just in. So when this guy should actually get destroyed, we'll destroy the actor, and then right now we're going to switch scenes. Is it switch scenes or change scene? I think it's change scene. Change scene to game over scene. Okay, there's different ways we can change scenes. We could either go to a scene by its name, we can go to the next scene for sequential scenes, we can go to the previous scene, or we can go to indexes. But I'm just going to go to the scene associated with game over. So we're playing our game now. So it switched scene to game over. Now, the reality is that it probably shouldn't have switched scenes to game over right off the bat. Mario probably should have like jumped up in the air and, you know, like you probably having it was the right. That's something we'll add some sounds, but so we need to have some sort of little like death scene type thing. All right, so if he's going to die, okay, so if we are in this otherwise here, we know Mario or Smiley in this case needs to die. Well, we probably want him to maybe jump back up in the air or something like that to go to the center of the screen or something, and that's how he is going to ultimately die. So let's start off with that. Well, in terms of what we know right now, how would you? So we have a tiny smiley face guy now. He's already been hit 3 times. He's supposed to die. We need to now make him probably back to full size, center of the screen, and then maybe he falls through the ground. So now he goes away completely. All right. How would you pull that off right now? Okay, well, how would you use a timer? Take me through the whole process.
Well, after he gets to a certain...
So we're in this otherwise. He's supposed to die. So how do you make him die? If we want to make him back to full size, put him in the center of the screen, and then he just drops through the ground, so he can't collide to the ground. That's his current death scene. Go ahead.
We can do a rule and then reset actor.
Okay, how would you reset the actor?
You
I'm in the rule right now.
and you do rule and then
We've reset game, we've reset scene.
reset actor.
So using only things we've introduced so far.
Spawn actor.
Okay, could spawn. I could actually destroy this one and spawn a brand new one. All right, so I could destroy this guy, then I could say spawn actor. Let's not change the scene yet. What are we going to do? We're going to spawn him, actor of type smiley, front of the actor. We can do this relative to the actor or relative to the scene. Well, if we always want him to be in the center of the scene, let's make him move relative to the scene. What position? 0, 0. Was that that's the center of the scene, or is the center 0? Is the bottom left 0, 0?
I think that's the bottom left.
Bottom left 0, 0. So let's say 200 by 200. Let's see where that puts us.
But if your player is somewhere else, it'll just appear off screen.
Except we're doing this relative to the scene, not the actor.
It's the scene, not the camera. So like, if you're on like 5,000.
Oh! This is the original. So 0, 0 in the scene is off from the. If we're halfway through the level, it'll be 0, 0 is all the way back at the beginning of the level. All right, so that's not going to be so hot. So we probably want to keep it then relative to the actor. Let's just do it 50 by 50 relative to the actor. In the up direction.
Would you want to put a position forward because don't you want him just to spawn above the actor and then back? Or do you want him to spawn
Okay, so you want to have him right above at a height of 50 above him? Okay.
And then rotation relative to C so that he's facing, like, so his rotation is like facing like
Okay, so that would be this. I'm back. All right, well, so it doesn't look horrible, but it's making me basically immortal. Let's make him go a little bit higher than 50. Okay, well, so we're getting him to spawn in a reasonable place. Well, now he's not spawning anywhere.
you destroy it after you spawn it.
Am I not destroying it after I spawn it?
I think, I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm destroying it beforehand.
So if it loses the coordinates, then it doesn't work.
Oh, stuck. All right, so we want this guy to fall through the ground, though. How would we pull that off? Hmm. Okay, so we need to make him so he needs to no longer collide with ground. He needs to no longer be able to collide with bowling pins. He needs to no longer be able to collide with any of those things, right? Okay, so for your homework, you can bring your game up to where we have it now if you'd like, but basically I want to have a situation where the player collides with something, and when he dies, he spawns above and falls through the ground. Okay? So figure out a solution, given what you already know how to do with Game Salad, to make your guy die in the way we want him to die. Make sense? So she has suggested that we make him so he cannot collide with the ground. He won't collide with the bowling pin, because those are all things that are giving us this constant reincarnation situation, right? All right, so we'll do that for Wednesday. I'll see everybody then.